Welcome to the 5 for 2 podcast with me, your host Adele, where we say no to careers where you're trading 5 days of misery for 2 days of fun. A place we discuss all things career, confidence, and money moves. I want to motivate, teach, and empower ambitious women to achieve more, earn more, feel more confident, and enjoy the work they do. It's all about believing you can have everything you want in your career and then going and getting it. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 5 for 2. This week I have a guest, and it's actually our first male guest on the show. We've not had a male guest, and I only just realized this recently. And I think it would be great to have a different perspective. I wanted to say to you guys, this episode is going to be great because you know how I always say to you guys, just start. Like, let's stop procrastinating, let's stop worrying, let's just start. My guest this week defines the journey as he's the definition of the journey. It is important to enjoy the journey and not focus too much on the destination. Because for him, his journey became the unexpected outcome that he was looking for. And is proof that you just need to take action. Even when you don't have the answers, just start where you are with what you have. So I would like to welcome Freddie Titcombe, who is the co-founder of Evolve Journey, a brand dedicated to helping people create lasting change through journaling, habit building, and intentional living, through the best-selling Evolve Journal and Evolve Accountability Academy. And I do want to say, guys, I recently got the journal. I've only had it for a couple of weeks, but I am loving it so far. So I do really like it. I started using it last week and I am really enjoying it already. So under Evolve, they use the 4 pillars of happiness, which are health, wealth, relationships. And Freddie has supported thousands in getting unstuck and building a life that they actually want to live. Without further ado, hey, Freddie, and thanks for joining me. How are you?
I am dangerously good, and I feel quite motivated after that introduction. I feel like I need to bring you along to parties that I go to, and like you can warm up the room for me. That was awesome.
I
Um,
love it. I love it.
yeah, I'm glad to hear you've been getting good use out of the journal as well. That makes me very happy.
Yeah, no, I really like it. And I can't wait for the listeners to just get a bit more insight on this journal and how it came to be. Is there anything you wanted to add that you do or about your journey before we get into the sort of episode and get chatting?
Yeah, I think it'll come out in the conversation, to be honest.
Perfect.
I think we'll chat it through, and it's interesting. I'm the first male guest as well, so hopefully I
Yes, you
can.
are.
Yeah, it should be an interesting conversation with. I don't know if I'll offer a different male perspective or it'll just be from what we've done over here and the journey that we've been going on. So yeah, excited for it.
Yeah, I definitely think you've got a great journey and a great message for the audience. And I know anyone listening is going to love it. So I'm going to jump right into it. Because the story of how your business started was really interesting to me. Like, you reached out to me and we spoke on Instagram and we were like, let's like just catch up and have a chat. And I was super interested just to learn about how your business started. So I wanted to speak to the audience because obviously you also said you're in a 9 to 5, which is going to
Yeah.
resonate with a lot of my audience who are in 9 to 5 and also wanting to either start a business or have a business. Um, so can you tell the audience how you got started and how you chose this business? How did you know this is what it would be?
Yeah, sure. It's been sort of a long and windy road, and I think when I was reflecting on this, it basically started when I was at uni. I did the classic, not knowing what I wanted to do. So, of course, I chose a business degree. I went off and did that, and I I started with an internship partway through the degree, and it was in cybersecurity sales. So I walked into my first sort of experience of the corporate world, and just with the limited experience that I had at that time in my life, I was like, oh, all businesses must be like this. It must be just a bunch of, for want of a better word, like moany, old, disillusioned white guys in suits. And I was like, I looked into the future and I was like, this isn't for me. I met some great people there, don't get me wrong, but I was sort of inquisitive and curious and asking these guys that on paper had, really good sort of careers and stuff like that. And I was like, how did you end up like this? Are you happy? What's next for you? And they were like, we just sort of landed here. We drifted basically, and I still don't know what I want to do. Was sort of the themes that came out of those conversations. So I left that internship and graduated from uni and the rest of it, and sort of went in the complete opposite direction. And my sort of mission at the time was just to help as many people as I could with limited skills and resources. What that looked like was going into care work. So I worked with like the National Autistic Society. I worked in mental health in schools with some of the sort of most challenging and sort of in need individuals across society. Did my like mental health first aiding course and all that sort of stuff, and ended up getting a bit burnt out myself. And thought, if my mission is to help as many people as possible, I think I need to think a bit bigger than just doing sort of one-to-one support with people.
Mm.
So from that, I was like, how am I going to do this? The way that I'm going to do it is by, having a bit of capital behind me that I can invest into something, that I can create something. So I joined a startup thinking that'd be quite a good way to sort of learn from someone who's entrepreneurial without having to chuck myself in and do all of the mistakes myself from the beginning. So I did that, and I was rocking and rolling, having a good time in this startup. Things were going to plan, and then all of a sudden, COVID hit, and as we know, this was like pretty. It was a pretty drastic change to everyone's life,
Mm.
like overnight. And me and my brother, we've always been sort of like best friends. We're only 3 years apart, same friendship group, all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, we're not able to see each other anymore. So we're like,
Mm.
what the hell is with this? Let's think of a way that's productive, that we can spend our time here, that keeps us in contact and, has a bit of purpose behind it. So I dropped him a text like, fancy going into business? That was like the starting point of it all. And really, the first iterations of our business were just sort of like crass money making schemes. Um, even which is funny to say now. I'm reflecting on all of this because the mission was to help people, but I think we just got like sort of, how you can get dragged into something. You're like, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. That's great. This
Yeah.
is so exciting. Um, Everything's possible. And basically, in the process of formulating those early ideas, what we realized is that we both kind of stumbled across journaling at the same time and realized that
Mm.
actually for the first time we were both getting way more consistent. We were both getting clearer on what we wanted out of life, and we had a bit more direction behind us. And we thought, oh, let's look into this, but let's see how far we can go down the journaling route, and it will help us grow our business. So
Business, yeah.
we went out there, looked at the other journals on the market, and for the listeners involved, maybe you've tried some, maybe you found them on Amazon, maybe you've tried freeform journaling, but the structured journals out there, so the ones with guided prompts that we found, were just for us just really cringy. There wasn't much substance to them. They were quite repetitive. So
Mm.
we basically thought that we could do something a bit better. So we created our own from scratch. Went through hundreds of iterations. Sam, the co-founder, my brother, who's got ADHD, which we didn't know at the time, which has been diagnosed now.
Mm.
So we had to sort of like battle test it against his brain. It all makes so much
Right.
sense in retrospect because at the time he was like, "This doesn't make sense to me. I hate it. Too much friction." So we went
Ah.
through hundreds of different versions and then finally released something out to the market, and that's what we've been doing ever since. But the overall brand and direction of the business is Evolved Journey. So we're trying to be a bit bigger than just a journal, but more focusing on that sort of transformation that we can take people on, and very much the journey that we went on together. So from being sort of disillusioned, lost, stuck, confused,
Mm.
motivated, and wanting change, but not necessarily knowing how to make it happen, having the systems to make it happen. So that's in a nutshell where we've been up until today, and we've been going for 5 years now. So it's been a hell of a journey, and we've got a lot left to do as well.
Oh, I love that. And I feel like there's so much to unpack. Just the way you started when you started talking about uni and everything like that. I still say to people to this day, and the listeners know because I say it on so many episodes, I do not know what I want to be when I grow up. I still
Mm.
don't know what I want to be. And I love that your journey was kind of so you went into mental health, you did a bit of this, you did a bit of that. I think it's really important for anyone listening to understand that you don't have to have the answer at the beginning. Like a lot of people think that from day one out of uni, you know you're going to be an entrepreneur and you just start your business immediately. Versus, I think your story, similar to mine, is proof that you might be doing one random thing and then be like, actually, this isn't for me anymore. And then move to another thing. But each thing connects in a way that helps you get to where you want to get to. And I think that's really important. It is really like people hate to hear like it's cringy, like it's about the journey, not the destination. It is actually about the journey, guys, because Freddie went on his journey and him and his brother were journaling to try and stay focused and consistent. And that ended up leading them to finding a business idea and to going out into the market and looking at all the. And I think that's really important. I'm a big believer in you take the first step and the next one will show itself. It will show up. You don't need all the answers. And I just love that that was your journey. I love that you weren't like, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur from day one and I started immediately out of uni. Like, I love that that wasn't it because I think sometimes people have to hear that everyone didn't automatically know they were going to be an entrepreneur. Everyone didn't know what their business exactly was going to be. You just knew you wanted to do something with your brother, and you
Yeah.
got here. And I love that. I always, and I know we spoke about this before when we spoke, I work in 12-week blocks when I journal. And I like to, especially when I'm trying to work towards a new level. And my podcast previously, I still remember when my podcast had like 6 listeners. And I remember the year, it was the end of 2023, and I decided one of my journal prompts was, um, I'm a woman with a powerful voice who inspires people to greatness. And I wrote that every day for 12 weeks. I mean, whenever I work on, and the listeners, you guys know, I love the 12-week plan because if you work on a 12-week block, you'll tend to notice it starts to work and you start to push through. I wrote that for 12 weeks straight. And then my podcast like went from nothing to like, I feel like 1,000. I feel like it just blew up all of a sudden. And it wasn't overnight. It'd been growing slowly, but it just went from like maybe 1,000 impressions to 30,000 impressions in like in that space of me working on those journal prompts. So I'm already a bit. I was already sold when you talk when we met and you spoke about journaling. But then when I got your journal, what I really like about your journal is the fact that it is so structured, but not in a rigid way. Like I love the fact that you talk about the domino, eat the frog. I was like, oh my gosh, I really like these type of prompts. Like I really liked working through the beginning of the journal before you get into the actual journaling. Um, and based on everything you've just said, based on your journey, it is clear that action is important because you just kept moving. That's how I feel. I feel like in your journey, you just kept on saying, you kept doing different things, you kept moving. What advice would you give to someone about taking action, even when they don't have every single answer?
Yeah, I think we touched on it then. Like you're very rarely going to have all of the information, all of the answers. It's very rarely going to be perfect. I think with these things, I like looking at sort of what does failure look like when comes to taking action, right? What
Mm,
is like the worst version of taking action? And for me, that's like you say, waiting for the perfect time. We
mm,
have a an unbelievable business in that I would say quite a lot of our revenue and our interest comes from people in January when it's New Year, New Me. And
mm,
we have that struggle all year trying to convince people, and I feel like we've made genuine progress this year with some of the messaging that we've had off this summer. Is that like if we wait every year until January 1st, we're just delaying things by a crazy amount, and then you read those things about the percentage of people that fail their goals by, say, like
Yeah.
February, and then they're waiting again until next year.
Next
So,
gen, yeah.
like, waiting for the perfect time, the perfect conditions, like, it's just not going to happen. So, I think if you invert that and say, okay, so now might not be the perfect time to start, but let's start. So that's one element. And I think people often let themselves get in their own heads, whether it's self-doubt, overthinking, or being afraid of change, or being really comfortable in their current situation. Those are all sort of like blockers that we've seen across the community of journalists when they've come into us, as to why they've not taken action in the past. And I think some of the remedies to those things are essentially to look at action. And quite often people will look at their goals, for example, and it all just seems insurmountable. But if you're able to break things down into the smallest next step, and then celebrate those small wins as you go along, that's gonna really help you start to build momentum. So it's like that whole, like, how do you eat an elephant? It's like one bite at a time. It's taking that approach, and as you go, there's going to be blockers, there's going to be obstacles, and quite often, if people don't have the right mindset, they see their failures or the blockers that get in the way as something that is either an excuse to give up, or just something that's so severe that they should stop, and they don't necessarily stop to learn the lessons and then carry on
Mhm.
moving, taking those small steps. And I think that's where we see people that become really consistent, is that they have that mindset that the setbacks that they come across along the way, they're there to teach them lessons. So I guess with action, and what we try and instill in people is, try and, whatever the goal is, try and identify one sort of keystone habit that's going to have a massive knock-on effect. So, for example, if you've got a health goal, whatever that may be, to lose weight, or to get in a certain level of shape, however you're measuring it, like, identifying one habit that's going to have the biggest knock-on effect, whether that be your sleep or something like that, that you can really focus on. And then that, if you nail the sleep, then you've got more energy, you're going to be eating better, all the rest of it. Same with journaling, for example, which is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it, is if you can journal every day, the habit that you build then has a massive knock-on effect in other areas of your life. You're going to be focusing on what you have rather than what you lack. So you're going to be a lot more grateful. You're going to be mindful of the decisions you're making on a daily basis, and if they feed back into your goal. So hopefully you're building healthy habits. And then, of course, you're reflecting on things like your health, wealth, your relationships, and freedom, and keeping those in balance. So you're not neglecting any of those areas, and then making yourself miserable as you go through the journey, and you're not deferring that
Mm.
happiness. And it's that reflection plus action that then will equal the progress that I think people are craving.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. You actually touched on two things I want to ask you. Um, the first one's not really a question, but the first one you mentioned was the January the 1st thing. I I'm such a believer in the January the 1st issue that people have, that they think that one day is suddenly, so like the day before, maybe 2 hours before, you couldn't start your goal, but 2 hours later, because we're now on January 1st, suddenly everything's changed. It's almost like people feel like it's a magic portal. And then I always remind people that January the 1st is different on this side of the world to in Australia. Like, so the hours are different. So how did the magic happen here but not there? Do you see what I mean? Like, I always say to people, January the 1st is not a real thing, because it's like, depending on your time zone, we all hit January the 1st at different times. So if you were in a different part of the world, would that mean you'd need to now delay the so-called magic? So I want people to like really listen to what Freddie was saying. That January the 1st thing doesn't exist. You either start or you don't. There is no, okay, I'm going to start on January the 1st and somehow it's going to make me win. You could start on July 1st and have the same outcome as you would if you started on January 1st. And then the other thing that you said was about people having like self-doubt, um, people maybe being comfortable, lots of reasons why people don't go for the things they want. Did you experience any of those things? Like, were you scared when you started this business? Or were you just, I'm going to take action and figure it out along the way?
Yeah, there's not been a many moments along the way where I've not been doubting myself in some capacity. You know,
Yeah.
you always, for
How do
me
you push through?
anyway,
How do you get through that?
for me it's like I and it's something that I reflect on and I write down. And
Mm,
one thing really helps is having a co-founder, my brother, that we're in the journey together. So, you know,
mm,
you verbalize these things to someone, and as you're saying it out loud and you're getting the conversations that you've been ruminating in your head out loud into a conversation, you kind of already start to realize how silly what you're saying is. And
yeah.
then if it then passes that test and then you have a bit of conversation about it, you start to, with like big believers in sort of like an exercise called fear setting, which is essentially you look at like what is the worst case scenario for taking the action, doing the thing. And quite often the worst case scenario really isn't that bad, or you can put in some sort of mitigation to get around it. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of the self-doubt that people have can come from comparing themselves with others, which is often you're a losing battle because you're only comparing yourself to the tip of an iceberg and you can't really see
Yeah.
the rest of it. Or they you know they had an unfair advantage because of XYZ, or they're
Hmm.
further along in their journey, so you know why are you comparing yourself to them? Or you have I guess things about nervousness of how other people are going to think about you, which
Yes.
is a blocker, and that really stops people from putting themselves out there, and they almost develop like a fear of failure, which is one of the things that you kind of need to drum into yourself that like to succeed, failure is going to be a condiment. It's going to be a heavy part of that journey.
Yeah.
If you just stumble across something and it works first time, fair play to you, but it's really likely that you were very, very lucky. The large majority of people have to fail, suck at it, learn, iterate,
Yeah.
and keep pushing through. So that's very much been our journey. It's been a journey of failing, learning, being forced to improve reluctantly because you know everyone would like to just be do a thing, be complacent, and it just be instantly celebrated and rewarded by everyone. But that's just not the
Yeah.
reality. You have to really, really work for it.
Yeah, I love that you said that because it is 100% true. Failure is part of the journey. I definitely think that when I even started my business, started anything, I hate the thought of failure. Like I hate it so much, but I've had to accept that every step of the way, failure is going to be a thing. And thanks for sharing just some of your thoughts because I think it's always really important that we share that you did have self-doubt. As much as you're talking about taking action and you're here at this point in your journey, there is doubt. I like that you said you spoke to your brother about things, and he's your business partner. But for anyone listening, speaking to people, speaking to someone you trust, I think is super important. Whether you have a business partner or not, I think getting that information out, like Freddie said, and actually talking it through. And then the exercise you said about fear is my favorite thing to do. I catastrophize everything. Listeners already know. You guys already know. But because I do that, I purposely always think of the worst case scenario. And then I think about how would I fix the situation if that did happen? Because the truth is, the worst case scenario can happen, guys. It could happen, but how do you fix it? And also on the flip side, what Freddie said, usually it's never as bad as the worst case scenario. Never, ever, ever. Like it's hardly ever that bad. Even when you do fail, it's never as bad as you thought it would be. Because I'm a catastrophizer, I love that exercise where I'm like, okay, let me just think of what's the worst thing that could actually happen in this situation, and then let me work backwards. So yeah, I really like that you mentioned that, and I think it is really important to share how the journey is shaped because I think sometimes when people see someone like you with your business and that you've been in it 5 years, they're like, well, it must have been doing great because otherwise, why would you still be here 5 years? But the fact that you're saying you've tested things, things haven't worked, I think it is really important for everyone to hear that. Um, Also, you work a 9 to 5. So it's hard enough starting a business. Like it's hard enough being an entrepreneur. What is it like running your business while working your 9 to 5?
Yeah, it's gnarly at times. Like that's the plain and simple truth, you know. You only have so many hours in a day, right? And sometimes you can find yourself being pulled in a few different directions. I think for me, it's allowed me to sort of do the best work in both my career and also in my business, which sounds a bit counterintuitive because I'm working at two things at the same time and sort of like split in focus. But for me, it's enabled me to not rush into things in the business, build in a long-term, sustainable, measured way. And also, I think I'm one of them people that if the pressure was on, like financially, I think that
Mhm.
would end up being, yeah, creating situations in the business where I'd probably do things that weren't, best for the business. They'd be quite
Yeah.
short term just to try and, to survive, to do the next thing. Whereas with having the balance of the 9 to 5, and I'm lucky in that my 9 to 5, I work in the e-commerce industry, so
Right.
that
Perfect.
complements my
Yeah.
online e-commerce business really nicely.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, what I learn in my business is appreciated by the clients that I consult with on a daily basis in my day job, and I learn things in that day job. And I've sort of, by design, worked for startups or companies with really sort of flat hierarchical structures. So I've always had
Ah,
quite a lot of face time and learnings with the people that are actually running the business. So I
yeah.
kind of feel like the 9 to 5 is an entrepreneurial journey in and of itself because I treat it like school and I'm always learning. And
Yeah.
then that complements the business, but it doesn't come without its trade-offs, right? So there's
Yeah.
only, like I said, there's only so many hours in the day. You finish the 9 to 5, and then maybe you've got um like 5, 6 hours worth of work that you want to do
Mm.
on the business. So the for me, the way I look at it is like, what am I trading for like dedicating that time? Quite often, if I compare myself to what I was before I started the business, especially in the winter, I'm basically just trading, sat there watching TV, and I'd much rather be doing something productive,
Yeah.
that's building towards something bigger in the future. And then I guess part of the journal in and of itself, we spoke about those 4 pillars because I'm
Mm.
constantly reflecting on where am I at with my health, wealth, relationships, and freedom as I'm going through this journey. It stops me from becoming like sort of deficient in any of those areas. So it stops me from going into a place where I'm like pouring absolutely everything into work, and then my health takes a back seat, and then I start
Mm.
spiraling down a road that I don't want to go down. Instead, I'm sort of very mindful as I'm going through that health is a priority. So I'm getting my exercise in, I'm eating well, and I'm also not neglecting my relationships because I don't want to come out of the end of like a rocket ship entrepreneurial journey and then like my friends and family don't know who I am and don't want anything
Yeah.
to do with me, because that for me would be miserable, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I like that you talked about that balance, that you're not all in one, all in the other. And I think it's really easy to be either or. So be like, oh, I'm all in my 9 to 5, so I'm not going to be able to dedicate time to anything else. And just the fact that you are talking about not just your business, but your family, your health. Like there are so many other areas in our life that we should be like our 9 to 5 or even our business shouldn't be our whole identity. And I really like that you said that. So with all that said, Why is your journal better than most? I'm just going to get straight to it. We know that you think journaling's important. I like journaling. I think it's important too. But why your journal? Why is the Evolve journal better than most out there, in your opinion?
Oof, where do I start? There's a long list. There's a long list, Adele. I think it's unique in that it's all in one. So quite often you'll hear like people who are journaling, they might have like a notebook for this, they might have their business journal, and then they might have something around their health or something like that.
Yes, that's
This
me. Just so
one's
you know, that is me. About 20 different journals.
Yeah, yeah. I was speaking to someone this week and they said that they just bought the Evolve journal and like they're really glad because at the moment they've got four journals that are propping up their laptop and that's the only use that they're getting out of them. So they've got one that they can carry around with them everywhere they go
Yes.
and then they're sorted. But I think what does make it unique is that you start in the journal with a discovery course. So we don't just chuck you into a daily system and then expect you
Mm,
to turn your life around and transform everything. So the discovery course in the beginning actually has that fear setting exercise that I mentioned earlier in it.
yeah.
It's got a bucket list in there. It's got an exercise to help you identify your ideal vision about 5 years from now. And then the system in the journal helps you identify your main goal, which is your domino goal for the next 6 months. The idea being that that domino goal, if achieved, makes absolutely everything else easier and has a positive knock-on effect for the goals that you have to come. So people go into the daily journaling system really clear on the direction, the purpose, what they're building towards. So they have a really strong, compelling why, and motivation is really, really high. And then the daily system is kind of a mixture of gratitude, habit tracking, productivity planning with things like the eat the frog and
Mhm.
a little bit of stoicism and mindset mixed in there as well. So those daily systems are basically designed to keep everyone consistent with the habit itself, reflecting on the four pillars, and just taking small, consistent action in the right direction. And importantly, the structures within the journal help you to reflect to make sure that you're actually still chasing the right ladder because I know I've experienced it myself and spoken to countless people that they actually get quite a long way down towards achieving a goal and they realize when the end is in sight that actually it's not what they want anymore and
Mm.
actually a new goal is way more relevant to the person that they've become along the journey and that's okay. So it allows people to have the flexibility to change and adjust and reflect as they go through the journey. And finally, the last thing that I'll say that makes it unique is we actually also have an online accountability membership that supports the journal. So we've
Mm.
got people in there that have got massively varying goals, but the thing that brings us all together is that we're we're all trying to do our best to become the best versions of ourselves and work towards those goals. So we've got lots of systems built into the online thing where you can get sort of personal support from me and Sam and the other people inside the community to basically wrap around the journal and help like yeah fast track things to achieving those important goals.
Love it, love it. You sold it well. No, I really like that. I really like that your journal is genuinely different. So to anyone listening, guys, it is actually very different from anything that I've used before. And you guys know I've been doing this podcast since 2021 and I've been journaling, talking about journaling, and this has got a very different. I've only just started using it, guys, so I will keep you updated. But yeah, I do really enjoy it, Freddie. So while I've got you here, before I let you go, I wanted to just touch on what, if any, was the hardest part about starting your business, and were there any mistakes that you wish you avoided in the early days?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think the hardest part has probably been I would say the cycle of going from an uninformed optimist. I touched on it
Right,
earlier, like thinking, wow, we're going to be an overnight success, to then
right,
a repeating cycle of, getting really excited about something, going all in, and then crashing back down to sort of an informed pessimist. So
right, yeah.
that's probably been the hardest thing, which I think that sort of like washing machine has just like
Yes.
battered a lot of like resilience into us.
Mm,
So I think the hardest part was basically not quitting when the delusion wore off and we realized like how hard things actually were going to get and how we needed to constantly continuously improve and
yeah.
never stay complacent. So I guess just being on edge to keep on doing that. And I think linked with that, some of the mistakes that we made, or especially earlier on, were
Mm.
because we were so deluded and optimistic. The first version of our journal, which I'll hold my hands up and say was bad, it was really
Oh,
bad,
wow.
versus where we are now. We put 100 different like iterations into it, really tested it ourselves, but we were quite fresh and we didn't actually
Yeah.
test it with other people. But we were like, yeah, this is going to work. This is going to really, everyone's going to buy this. It'll be sold out in a month. So we bought an obscene amount, and then we were sort of stuck early
Oh,
on with this like massive amount of stock that we had early signs that people liked it, but obviously their feedback was like, this is wrong, this needs to change, this would be so much
yeah.
better if it was, and the list goes on. So the lesson there, I think, would be to start smaller, to gain feedback from people, not to let
Mm,
it sort of completely capture you and like dull whatever vision that you had, but to put something out and say, how does this work for you, and then learn from who your customer is, and see your customer avatar when you first launch. The people that you actually end up attracting could be completely different. That was definitely the case with us. We thought we were going to launch a journal and we'd attract loads of people that are the same sort of age that as us and the same sort of interest, and actually it was the inverse. We ended up attracting basically 80% female audience. So
sweet, yeah.
you never really know where you're gonna go with these things. But that would be my sort of lesson from certainly the early days, is to do stuff a little bit smaller, like get a wait list, get feedback from people, learn, iterate, and then go from there as a way of testing your ideas, rather than going in so big and so optimistic that you then, like we were basically cycling with the brakes on for a little bit because we had all this stock that we couldn't shift. So it's quite a dilemma in the business to say, okay, we'll invest in a new product before we've sent like before we've sold out of this one. So that was one of the main learnings. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The start small. I definitely fell into that trap of like, you need all the things, all the bells and whistles, but it doesn't always necessarily work out that way. And I like that you said about the delusion, the optimism versus the pessimism, because I think that's the place where a lot of people give up
Mm.
when you're in that cycle. I like that you called it like a washing machine cycle, because I think a lot of people get in that cycle. When you start a business, even if you're just changing career, even when people are changing industry, even if you're going to be going from employee to entrepreneur, I feel like the delusion, like you said, like you think everything's going to be perfect, everything's going to be great. And then when it isn't, and that happens more than once, I feel like that's usually the place people give up. So I'm glad that you shared it because you didn't give up. As much as you went through the cycle, you've kept going. And I think the proof is always in the pudding. The more you go through the cycle, the more you'll end up with something great, like you've ended up with Evolve. Like I think you will end up with something great if you just understand that you're going to keep being delusional, and that's okay. Because the delusion is the fuel. But you also have to then, on the flip side, when the failure comes, you have to learn from it and keep moving. So thank you for sharing that also. I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like it's going to help a lot of different people, just from where you started, where you talked about the different industries you've worked in, how you and your brother got started with this, the fact that your brother's got ADHD, and then you tested it on him. I know a lot of my listeners have got ADHD, and a lot of people got diagnosed with ADHD after the pandemic. I've noticed that. a lot of older
Mm.
people. Like I've got friends who that happened to. I did an episode on it with someone who was an ADHD expert, because there are a lot of people that did end up after the pandemic realizing, and I think because they were saying the pandemic where people were alone, it heightened people's ADHD. And then a lot of people who didn't know they had it got diagnosed. So I think I really like that you tested on your brother. I just think this whole conversation has been great. Is there anything you want to let the audience know that I didn't ask? And then also let them know where they can connect with you. Obviously, guys, you always know it's going to be in the show notes. I will have all the links so that you guys can go and check out the journal for yourself, and you guys can connect with Freddie and his brother. But yeah, if you let everyone know as well where they can connect with you, and is there anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think one thing to end on is we've spoken a lot about the journal here, and I'm so passionate about the power of journaling that the barrier to entry with this thing that can really transform your life is so low. So I'm,
Mm.
as much as I'd love everyone that listens to this to buy one of my journals, like I'll be completely transparent, but you really don't need to do that. You can just get a piece of paper and a pen and start getting your thoughts down and start having that relationship with yourself, talking to yourself like a friend, and just reflecting on what's happening in your life and where you want to go, and start taking that small little action, and it will have a massive domino effect in your life. And if you're looking at the page and it's quite intimidating because it's blank, then maybe the first reflection that you could do is to think about those 4 pillars of happiness that we've spoken about a few times on this podcast. So that's your health, your wealth, your relationships, and your freedom. And just ask yourself a simple question: is there any of those pillars in your life that are deficient? And is there something in your control, a small thing that you could do where you could take action to improve one of those pillars now? And that's just, it's going to take you 5 minutes to sit down and reflect. And you've probably got a pen and you've probably got a piece of paper already lying around. So I'm hoping it's free for you. And of course, then if you do want something that's a little bit more structured, we're more than happy to help you inside the academy or with the journal. We read all of our emails, and I personally monitor our Instagram and stuff like that. So you can find us at Evolve Journey on Instagram, and then our website is evolvejourney.co.uk. So just reach out. I'm always happy to help with any questions that you've got and support with any of your journeys, really.
I love that. Like, I love the fact that you said, yep, you would love people to buy your journal, but they should just get started. That ties in so nicely with the title of this episode. Just start, guys. Like, listen, you don't have to have all the answers. It is really about starting. I want to thank Freddie for being here, for sharing your journey, for explaining how journaling helped you and how you then turned it into a business. And yeah, like, thank you I like the way you ended that. Like, people should just start, people should just try. Journaling has definitely changed my life, like things in my life, like way before I'd ever met Freddie. Guys, you know, I always speak about stuff like this. So I do think it's really important. And thank you for coming on and sharing, and also for being our first male guest. So
My
thank
pleasure.
you. I will have all your links in the show notes so that the audience can connect with you and see what great work you guys are doing. Guys, I have enjoyed this episode, and I hope you have too. If you have, share it with someone who could really benefit from it. I think everyone can benefit from journaling. Everyone can benefit from the message of just get started. Like, guys, you know, I always say it's progress over perfection, because if you're waiting for things to be perfect, you will never, ever progress. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I will speak to you on the next episode. Thanks, guys. I hope this episode gave you exactly what you needed and motivated you to confidently take steps towards your next career move. If you enjoyed it, screenshot and share it on your socials, tag me on Instagram, and come join my community of amazing women working on leveling up their confidence and career. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.